Have you been to Epcot's Spain Pavilion? Have you ridden its Mount Fuji roller coaster? Or what about the boat ride in the UK Pavilion? Unfortunately, we can't do that, as these are some of the projects that were planned for Epcot but never saw the light of day. Let's take a look at the top 5 cancelled projects from Epcot and what it could have been. Hi guys, Gio here for Independent Guides. Remember to give this video a like and hit the subscribe button. I'm hoping to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so please help me out in reaching that goal. Remember, that subscription is completely free. So Epcot's going through a huge transformation right now, and as it prepares to celebrate its 40th anniversary next year, there's lots of exciting stuff coming. But in this video, we're looking at the attractions that we never got to enjoy. A huge shout out to theme parks and entertainment.com and disneyandmore.com, as well as wdwnt.com, who all published a huge number of articles on Unbuilt Disney rides, so be sure to check out those websites after this video for more details. I'll link them in the description. So let's get into this. Here are Epcot's best unbuilt rides in no particular order. Number 1, Thames River Cruise. So our first unbuilt attraction is at the UK Pavilion, which sadly to this very day doesn't have any rides or stage shows. You can meet characters here, you can find out all about your family heritage, and you can enjoy the live entertainment, but there are no real rides. As recently as last year, we'd been promised a Mary Poppins attraction, but now even that's been cancelled. However, Disney once had a much more elaborate attraction planned for this part of World Showcase. When Epcot was initially being proposed, the Thames River Cruise would have probably been one of the World Showcase's most impressive attractions, and not too different from the boat ride that's in the Mexico Pavilion today. Thames River Cruise would have taken place in a multi-story building with scenes towering all around you, including Parliament, Big Ben, Tower of London, Nelson's Column, and many other London landmarks like Tower Bridge would have been there as well. And of course you see your fair share of black cabs, red London buses, and a phone box or two dotted around. From the concept art, it even looks like they may have a cast member on board to tell you about what you're looking at, just like the Storybook Canal boats at Disneyland. So this would have been a very large, very expensive, very ambitious attraction, and a UK Pavilion ended up being redesigned without including it. Number 2, the Spain Pavilion. So whereas the Thames River Cruise was never announced to guests as coming, number 2 on this list was. The Spain Pavilion was one of 4 new pavilions announced as coming to Epcot Centre in a booklet available to guests on opening day. Other new pavilions would have been Equatorial Africa, Israel, and Morocco. And of course Morocco was the only one that was fully realised of those. So what would this new Spain Pavilion contain? The first thing would be a boat ride, so Disney does like these due to their high capacity. There would be a film attraction similar to that which can be seen in the France, China, and Canada pavilions today. And this film would reflect the character of Spain from its origins all the way to modern day, or at least modern day in the 1980s. And there would of course be dining locations, there'd be shopping as well. Each pavilion required a sponsor, and with no sponsor forthcoming, the pavilion was dropped. According to themouselets.com, the Spanish government did pay for the design cost of this pavilion, which apparently averaged at around $500,000 at the time. But ultimately, a new incoming Spanish government decided not to proceed with sponsoring the pavilion. Number 3, Mount Fuji Roller Coaster. Today's Japan Pavilion doesn't really have a major attraction. It's probably got the best shop in Epcot's World Showcase. It has great dining opportunities, but instead of a real attraction, it has an information display instead. But of course, Disney did at least initially envisage an attraction for this pavilion. And if you thought the UK boat ride was impressive, then the Mount Fuji roller coaster would have been on a completely different level. So the mountain would have stood behind the pavilion, and it would be the same pavilion as it is today. And this would be a roller coaster with a similar design on the inside to the Matterhorn at Disneyland. This project actually got reasonably far along, and so we have lots of concept art, and there's even 3D models of what the Mount Fuji mountain would have looked like behind the pavilion. According to theme parks and entertainment.com, the ride even had a sponsor lined up. This was meant to be Fujifilm, which, can you think of a better sponsor for Mount Fuji than Fujifilm? But when another sponsor, Kodak, found out that the competitor might be appearing in the parks, it threatened to end all sponsorship opportunities with Disney, and just like that, the ride disappeared. No sponsor meant no ride. Number 4, the Switzerland Pavilion. So continuing with our mountain theme, another pavilion that came incredibly close to being built at World Showcase was Switzerland. This one came so close to being built that an entire proposal booklet was produced in 1989, and it's filled with details and concept art. So WDW News Today has a full look into this pavilion, and of course that is linked in the description, but here are the highlights. The Switzerland Pavilion would have been situated between the Germany and the Italy pavilions, and it would have featured a Swiss village in the foreground as the entrance, and then there would have been an enormous 192-foot tall Matterhorn mountain in the background. And so this layout would have been very similar to the Japan Pavilion, not too far away. To put the size of that Matterhorn mountain into perspective, this mountain would be 3 feet taller than Cindrella Castle at Magic Kingdom. And, just like the Japan Pavilion, the mountain would of course house a roller coaster. This one would have been a clone of Disneyland's Space Mountain. As I say, this concept got incredibly far along. Disney even went to the trouble of coming up with 2 different alternative storylines for this attraction, including one where you'd go inside a super secretive bobsled society. The Switzerland Pavilion would have had a huge number of shops selling classic Swiss items, and this pavilion would even have its own official tourism centre, and that's because Disney was proposing that the Swiss government would sponsor it. So what happened to this pavilion? You can probably guess. It's a familiar theme, of course. It was a sponsorship issue. The Swiss government didn't want to pony up the money, and a pavilion was never built. I do always wonder how much extra tourism you get from Floridian guests, and even guests from across the US, because they've seen these pavilions at Epcot. I guess we'll never really know, but at the very least I think it's a great marketing tool. And for people who can't necessarily travel abroad, this might be the closest thing they'll get to ever meeting someone from that country as well, because of course we have the international cast members staffing all of the pavilions. There are dozens of concept art photos for you to look through, so again, take a look at the description after this video is over and have a look scene by scene at the 2 Matterhorn storylines and much more concept art from Walt Disney World News Today. Number 5, the mythical Seas Pavilion. For our last cancelled area, we're leaving the World Showcase and we're entering what is Future World today. And more specifically, we're going to the Seas Pavilion, which here features the characters from Finding Nemo today. But a previous concept for this land wasn't so much about the real seas, but the mythical imaginary seas instead. In this mythical version of the seas, the basic layout of the pavilion would have been pretty much exactly the same, with a large aquarium featuring an on-mover attraction travelling through it. However, this version of the attraction would feature characters like Poseidon and mermaids. The storyline would have been incredibly important, and you'd ride in a bubble vehicle created by Poseidon, which would allow you to breathe and explore underwater. It's important for me to say that the Nemo theme of the attraction that we know today only came in 2005, but before that, this was actually a very simple Omnimover ride going through the aquarium without any of the show scenes. Instead, when the pavilion opened in 1986, a few years after the rest of the park, what ended up being built was a scaled-down version. Budget cuts meant that instead of an elaborate dark ride based on mythology that we can see from the concept art, was replaced by a simple Omnimover ride through the aquarium. As themeparksанdentertainment.com says, the version that we ended up with today, with Finding Nemo, is actually a much more elaborate dark ride than what was there initially, and so the pavilion did eventually get something that resembles the original concept in terms of scale and ambition, but with less Poseidon and more Nemo and Bruce. So those are just 5 of the different cancelled projects from Epcot that could have been built. As I mentioned at the start, there is an almost 50-part series for you to look at and read in the description. If you like this kind of video, do let me know. It's a bit different to my other videos, so let me know in the comments. And I definitely would consider doing another one of these, maybe about some of the other cancelled attractions or the hotels. There's even entire theme parks that Disney proposed and didn't end up building. I find it super interesting to think of what could have been and how different the parks would have been today. If you've watched this far, then I assume you've enjoyed the video, so do leave a like to let me know. Remember, I've got that goal to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so please help me out in reaching the goal, and of course you'll be the first to know as soon as I post another video. If everyone who watches this video click the subscribe button, I'll be well on my way to that 1,000 subscribers. Check out my guidebook to Walt Disney World for 2021 at independentguidebooks.com. Also have one to Universal. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Gio for Independent Guides, and I'll see you in the next video.